All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, in this week's ABC News town hall, Donald Trump gave an utterly ridiculous answer on health care. Let's take a listen to a little bit of that.
But what we're doing is we're going to be doing a health care plan, pre-existing, protecting people with pre-existing conditions. As an example, yourself, it sounds like that's exactly perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about. We're going to be doing a health care plan very strongly and protect people with pre-existing conditions. I will say this. They will not do that because they have socialized.
I have to stop you there.
Socialized
I just have to stop you there because it's just on a couple of points. Number one, Joe Biden has ran against Medicare for all in the primaries, but much more importantly, Obamacare guaranteed people with pre-existing conditions could buy insurance, guaranteed they could buy it at the same price as everyone else, guaranteed a package of essential benefits, guaranteed that insurance companies couldn't put a lifetime limit on those benefits. You fought to repeal Obamacare. You are arguing.
Well, I essentially did.
You're arguing in the Supreme Court right now to strike it down. That would do away with pre-existing conditions.
So that we can do new health care.
But you've been promising a new health care plan. I interviewed you in June of last year. You said the health care plan would come in 2 weeks. You told Chris Wallace this summer it would come in 3 weeks. You promised an executive order on pre-existing.
I have it already.
But you've been trying to strike down pre-existing conditions.
I have it already, and it's a much better plan for you, and it's a much better plan.
If only it was true that Joe Biden was planning socialized medicine. But Donald Trump isn't the only one desperately trying to convince progressives that Joe Biden is truly a socialist at heart. Numerous media outlets have taken the bait from the Biden campaign and written pieces about how, no, really, he's going to be so progressive, guys. You won't even believe it. The latest offering in this genre comes from Politico. In it, they argue that Biden really learned from the small ball failures of the 2009 stimulus bill and recession approach and has now surrounded himself with a lot of truly progressive economic advisors who will make sure that they don't make the same mistakes this time around. Advisors they cite include Elizabeth Warren, Jared Bernstein, and Raj Shetty. The article does note that he's also taking advice from some notably less progressive voices like Jeff Zients, Gene Sperling, and Larry Summers, but is quick to assure its readers that Summers has moved decidedly to the left since serving in the White House. Now, the most telling part of the piece is when they actually try to describe what this fantasy Biden as FDR approach might specifically look like. Apparently, they haven't gotten a whole lot in the way of details. They wrote, Biden and his advisors have avoided putting a dollar figure on the size of the stimulus the former vice president would seek if he wins. Some of it depends on whether Congress approves any further spending this year on top of the nearly $4 trillion already approved to fight the economic devastation wrought by COVID-19. Because, of course, what you'd be sure to do if you were planning a super bold transformational economic approach is not tell anyone what you were actually planning. Instead, I'm sure they're waiting until after they risk a loss to Donald Trump for failing to have a big enough economic program for a big reveal. Guess what, everyone? Now that we're elected, we're going to do health care for everyone and a jobs program and a housing program. Because keeping extremely popular ideas a secret from the voting public before surprising everyone with their amazingness is exactly what politicians always do. In fact, another piece in Politico completely exposes the absurd fantasy of their Biden is FDR initial article. This one is about how hard it will be even to accomplish Biden's more moderate plan for expanding Obamacare. In that piece, establishment Democratic politicians and their aligned strategists all line up to give Politico expectation-lowering quotes about how, gosh, they really want to do health care, but those bad old Republicans are just going to stop them again. And plus, it's so super complicated. So really, what can you do? For example, the most significant expansion of health care coverage under the Biden plan as currently conceived involves allowing poor adults free access to a public option in the red states that haven't fully implemented the Medicaid expansion. But according to a former Obama administration official, this may not actually happen. But never fear, quote, should he fail to get the public option through Congress, Biden is likely to explore policies that could help convince conservative governors to expand Medicaid. I'm sure this time convincing Republican governors of the wonders of Obamacare is totally a thing that will absolutely work. No. Of course, the real object of Democrat desires this year isn't the young progressive or the working class Latino who might be swayed and energized by bold economic action. Instead, it's what Rahm Emanuel famously dubbed the Biden Republican. The John Kasich and Rick Snyders of the world might be put off by all this FDR talk, and we simply mustn't have that. After all, the Democrats still have to win over people like this lady. Meet Danielle Pletka. She's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and she says that she absolutely hates Trump, yet feels she may be forced to vote for him because of how radical Joe Biden is. I'm not even kidding. She actually argues that. Now, you know exactly what this woman is like. She hates Trump for all the dumbest and vaguest reasons, like, as she put it, quote, his odious tweets, his chronic mendacity, and general crudeness. But there are substantive disagreements as well. For example, she's also worried that he may actually follow through on his promise to end the forever wars, and in her view, that would be just terrible. All of her fears about Joe Biden, on the other hand, are also the worst and dumbest fears. She worries that he might successfully get back into the Obama-era Iran deal, one of the brightest spots, actually, of that presidency, and is concerned that he will cut defense spending, even though he did recently tell Stars and Stripes that he might increase the military budget. Meanwhile, Ms. Pletka brought hook, line, and sinker into the Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism messaging that the overwhelming majority of the country is certainly smart enough to see as utterly ridiculous. She writes, I am increasingly persuaded that what I see in Joe Biden, whom I first met in '92 and whom I believe to be a decent person, would merely be the facade for an administration fully backed by both houses of Congress with an agenda that would seriously damage the nation. The corrosive left-wing extremism of 2020 would be ascended, while a smiling President Biden assures the country that everything is fine. This person is ridiculous, of course, in her views, and her opinions really underscore a couple of things. First of all, please, people, realize that no matter who you run, whether it's Bernie and AOC or Joe Biden or former Republican Michael Bloomberg, Republicans are going to claim that they are far-left socialists bent on turning the country into Venezuela. They literally do it every single time, with 2016 as the only real possible exception. Second, these imaginary Biden Republican types are some of the only people who actually fall for that dumb socialism messaging, which is why for all Team Biden's outreach and obsession over converting the moderate Republican voter to Bidenism, for all the never-Trumpers on cable news and the Lincoln Project and John Kasich with his primetime DNC slot, et cetera, for all of that, here is how Joe Biden is actually currently doing with self-described Republicans. According to the latest Economist YouGov poll, he is at a whopping 5% with Republicans, which is statistically equal to the 4% with Democrats that Trump is polling. Both of those Biden Republicans are a real force to be reckoned with here. Meanwhile, you've put the election in jeopardy by bleeding Latinos and demoralizing literally everyone with your milquetoast quest to appease the Danielle Pletkas of the world. Biden may well win the election because of Trump's manifest failures, but don't let anyone gaslight you into believing that Biden Republicans are a significant force or that it's in any way electorally smart for Democrats to obsessively craft their campaigns and policy prescriptions to suit those people. These people are looking for a reason to not vote for you, and in the end, no matter whether you're Bernie or Biden, they will find one. And that's the thing, Sagar. Year after year.
Love it.
They go after the Danielle Pletka voter, the moderate Republican. They're obsessed with this person. For decades, they've been obsessed with this person. And where have they gotten? The number of Republicans that cross over and vote across party lines has only gone down and down and down. There are actually fewer of them backing Joe Biden than were backing Hillary Clinton last time around.
Well, you'll love this. October 2019, Pletka was on MSNBC. She says, quote, the only thing that could get me close to voting for Donald Trump is Elizabeth Warren. So what changed? What happened?
Interesting.
I mean, seriously though,
Yeah.
what happened between October of 2019 and today? Because they actually went and they nominated the guy who Pletka was like, you have to vote for this guy in order for me to vote for him. And now she's still like, I'm not going to vote for him.
No, that's exactly it.
And I was like, wait, what?
The entire Democratic primary was fought on the grounds of, like, who can win over Danielle Pletka. Like, that was, like, the underlying theme. I looked up an old New York Times article from December of 2019, so, like, the heat of the ramp up to the primary, right? And they had this headline that was, here are the Republicans who would vote for Biden, basically. Like, that was the whole idea. And it was funny because I read through the piece, and they didn't actually talk to any Republicans who were going to vote for Biden, but they talked to a lot of liberals who had friends and neighbors who imagined that their friends and neighbors would vote for Biden. But guess what, guys? They ain't.
Well, I think that's hilarious. And all of this just goes to show that it was a sham from the first place. Look, people are mostly partisan. There's nothing, I don't even think there's anything wrong with that, but pretending that that's how you're going to win new voters is by taking look, she's made her career in the right-wing think tank world. The truth is, it's a disaster for her if she's not in power, right? Like, probably has more power in the Trump administration, ever will in a Biden administration, and that's just how it works, folks. And so how do you actually want to get new votes? The people who don't vote currently, the 100 million people who don't vote, the 40 million, I mean, if you're a Republican, there are 40 million white working class voters who didn't turn out in the polls in 2016.
Yeah.
40 million! You could win the whole election if you turn out even 2 or 3% of those people. And that is the thing. It's all a con, going after these suburban people who are largely going to vote exactly the same way that they always have. That doesn't mean that they're going to vote for the same party. They're going to vote for the person who they feel is going to take care of their best economic interests,
right,
which in this case Biden has aligned himself with. But these Pletka type voters and others, they're locked in. That's the thing. Most of these people, they're too locked into the system. The only way to get new voters is to go outside of the system and get them to come in.
Listen, Joe Biden is well positioned to win, as we've described.
Yeah.
And not that to say that it's over, but if the election happened today, a good chance that he would end up being the next president. So, look, the strategy may work out. I'm not saying that it won't, in part because Donald Trump has just been such a failure in terms of the coronavirus response and can't seem to get it together. But the reason that Biden is vulnerable right now at all is because you have such depressed enthusiasm among the base of the party, especially among young progressives, and because he's bleeding Latinos. So, state like Florida, okay? He's doing great with seniors, outperforming Hillary with seniors, outperforming Hillary with white suburbanites. That puts him in range. If he also had the numbers, not outstanding, but just the numbers Hillary Clinton did with Latinos, Florida would be game, set, match, and that's it. Right? Presidency done. Trump cannot win effectively without winning Florida. So he has left himself vulnerable by chasing this John Kasich moderate Republican strategy. And if he loses, this will be why.
Exactly. No, so you can actually see this. I was just telling you about this analysis of Sun Belt voters, Arizona and Florida and another state, where they look at independents. Who are independents? Overwhelmingly, these people are younger and much more Hispanic than people who self-identify as Democrat or as Republican.
Interesting.
So fascinating. It seems like that is a dynamic where we know, based upon the average of polls, again, not one poll, average of all polls, that Latino voters are much less likely to back Biden in the same levels that they were for Hillary Clinton, and that Trump seems to be up by around 7 points with that demographic. So that is the new independent there, right? And so for all of the talk from the Dems about demography is destiny, demographic, the 40-year coalition and all that, they haven't actually done anything to do anything about it.
Can't take people for granted. That's the bottom line. All right, coming up on Rising, one of the hottest summers on record has led to a devastating fire season from California to Washington State. Fellow at the Energy Policy Institute at the University of Chicago is going to explain the conditions that led to those tragic fires when Rising returns.